Good morning, evening, and possibly afternoon, depending on where you're at. Welcome to the Ripped Roofer Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Lavelle. Today we're going to be discussing, public adjusters and all the likes, but generally, this is our first podcast, my first podcast. Honestly, the goal is to provide a lot of different information to property owners, managers, roofers alike, regarding the building life cycle maintenance program. So today I've got sitting with me, Mr. Jordan Poehling, the man, the myth, the legend from Premier Claims. How you doing today, Jordan?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Gosh darn it, sir. I got to say, it's a pretty good day.
Yeah,
pretty good day. It's first podcast, man. It's a little weird. I've actually been friends with Jordan Poehling for, what's it been? 3 years now?
Yeah,
2 years?
a little over 3 years.
Yeah, I got to say, most of my success in the roofing community and the business has been primarily due to this gentleman right here. And contrary to popular belief, I know that people think that being a public adjuster is an easy job. As you can tell from Jordan's hair, it is not. It's been aging about 3 times the rate of an average human being.
No, this has been a long time coming, man. I appreciate you having me on the show here. I know we've talked about doing this, me coming out to Denver where you're actually located, but traveling all over the United States and running and gunning and getting on every single roof that we can possibly get on. And according to my hair, I probably should look 45, but I'm actually only 30. So this guy keeps me busy. I can at least say it that much. But like I said, I appreciate you having me on here. It's been a long time coming, and I really wanted to get into this. I really wanted to get on the podcast. I really wanted to have these conversations. And anybody that's out there, anybody that has these questions, and we're a part of a lot of Facebook groups. We're a part of a lot of different groups that have questions like this. So if somebody can come on here and have these conversations or listen to these conversations with us, hopefully it can probably help us out a little bit.
Well, 100%, man. I mean, and look, I've been in the business. We did, I did residential roofing for a long time. And started off in Chicago, then moved to Dallas, Texas, which is, as you know, it's the wild, wild west.
The Mecca.
It is. It's the Mecca. I mean, it's and sometimes I've heard that you don't have to have a license down there. I know that you can, but
two trucks in a truck, man.
Yeah, 2 trucks in a truck, baby. That's what it is. So going through that, and then obviously moving into the commercial, a couple of years later, and started to deal with, obviously storm chasing and all that other stuff. And then eventually moving from storm chasing into like what you and I have been talking about over the last, year or so, which is the portfolio development, management, life cycles, getting people set up for success in the future, which, a lot of people really think, when it comes to roofing, it's a simple thing, right? It's like, hey, just give me a quote. Give me an estimate, and there's a lot more that really goes into it, right? So, with working together and having a solid public adjuster, having a good network of people in the metal industry, having good crews, having all the way across the board is really what is going to kind of differentiate, one contractor from another, a public adjuster from another, because it's really. When you come to at least, so I came from the tire business, as you know, right? Which anybody who knows me, all I do is talk about the tire business. It taught me everything I know, though, about business. And, one of the big things, though, is that it's one of the last kind of old school industries, right? Where you've got a lot of handshake deals. You've got a lot of people that work on relationship based. And not only that, you really, you leverage your network a lot, so I'll tell you what, after I went back to roof school and a couple other things, the further education. And as I'm meeting all these different people, it's like, holy cannoli, like I've got so much more resources than you really realize. So, one thing that I want to really kind of get into is, obviously you've been doing this for a lot of years, what really brought you, first off, can you tell us what a public adjuster is?
Public adjuster is somebody that's going to control the whole entire claim from you from the start to finish, from A to Z. That's, I guess I'm going to put it in layman's terms for every single person. I don't like to get fancy. We were just having a conversation out here before we walked in here, how long you've been doing this, what's your social media presence, stuff like that. I don't really have a social media presence because this industry to me, when I first started into it, I came from a background of selling guns and body armor and ammunition. I loved what I did. I loved working with police force. I loved working with firefighters. Uniforms. That was my world. It was handshakes. It was meeting people face to face. It was going down to the precinct. It was going to the fire station. It was doing the measurements. That's what I did. That's where I learned. That's where I cut my teeth at. When I came into this industry and how I got involved in it was I got brought into it on a whim. It was almost like an accident. I didn't really realize what this was until I met a PA. I was talking to him. I was actually sitting in line taking my kids to Santa. and met with a gentleman, and he was just talking to me. His name's Kyle Maring. He brought me involved in this. He said, I think you'd be really good at this. When I started talking to him, I was like,
wait, hang on. You met Kyle at the mall?
I met Kyle at the mall.
No way.
Yes. I met Kyle at the mall, sitting in line, taking my kids to Santa. And
real quick, just so everybody knows, who is Kyle?
Kyle is the owner of Premier Claims. He started it probably 6 years ago. He'd been involved in adjusting and public adjusting for a while. There was a huge storm up in Omaha, Nebraska. That's where we're at right now. It was something that he wanted to be involved in. I think before he said he flipped homes or was involved in something like that. Yeah. Filed a claim, realized that, I think it was the Allstate or State Farm or something like that, paid him out it was like $5,600. And he was like, oh my gosh, this was the most money I think I've ever made, because there was a hailstorm on a property that I was flipping at the time. And I think he ran into a PA or something along the lines. They told me a story years ago, but the PA was like, your roof had so much damage on it, you could have replaced the whole entire thing. And he didn't understand it.
Oh, so they only paid him for like a partial replacement.
I don't even think they paid him for that. I think he was, young and didn't know any better. Just kind of like a lot of property owners that we deal with, that they don't file claims a lot. They don't know how this whole entire industry works.
Right.
What type of power you can have on your side with a PA, with a roofer that actually knows what they're talking about. Like kind of you mentioned before, two trucks and a truck come out there and they say, hey, you need a whole new roof. They give you some quote for $130,000. It's kind of like what you're saying back in the day. Let's go get 3 quotes. I'm going to turn in the cheapest one, or I'm going to turn in the most expensive one. I'm going to take the cheapest work, and we're going to be good to go. Right. The days of the 80s and 90s of that being realistic is no more. But when I met Kyle and I got into this, he said, we connected well. We liked each other. Let's get into let's do this. And I was like, at first I was like, not a shot. I didn't think it was a real thing. Yeah. I honestly didn't, just because I didn't realize what a PA brought to the table. In my eyes, I'm like, you're kind of a money manager between the carrier and the contractor. I don't really understand what this is or what this takes to be this. Just because it's, in the Midwest, it's not a big thing. Right. You say PA up here, you think physician's assistant, and that's the honest truth. I mean, it really is. But then you say PA down south of Missouri, down that border, everybody knows what a PA is. I mean, they deal with them. They work with them all the time. A lot of property management groups deal with them. And it wasn't really until he took me down south where I realized how big the roofing industry was, how much I think involvement contractors had down south compared to what they have up here in the Midwest and up north. It's a whole different world when you come into that. So getting into that and going down there and realizing that there is a tremendous amount of work to do. There's a tremendous amount of bills that need to take place and the type of storms that take place. What brought Premier up to the Midwest was the hailstorm back in 2017. It was catastrophic. Stories from people that work here when they came up here. I'm used to the hail here. It's normal. Yeah. It's not like Texas. But it's, we would always get, 2-inch hail or 3-inch hail when I was growing up as a kid. And it was kind of run of the mill. Like you get a new roof, it really wasn't anything big. It wasn't until later on when we started getting large hailstorms where, I kind of started opening my eyes for it. And when I would file a claim, when I started owning homes here, it was, hey, we'll give you $8,000 or we'll give you $15,000 to replace this. And looking back on it, I didn't know any better. They're replacing my roof, but not my gutters or my siding or my fence that took on damage or something like that. Now, looking back, I wish I would have known that. And that's really kind of what got me into this. Also, another thing that got me into this a lot was my best friend moved up here from New Orleans. He's a Katrina victim.
New Orleans.
Yeah, New Orleans. If he ever watches this, he'll kill me for saying that. But when he came up here, he had State Farm. They didn't give him a whole lot of money. He was kind of, his house was swept away. He was kind of, it was what it was. Like, this is the check that you get. They didn't know any better. Back then, they didn't, younger and being a family that came in that wasn't from the States, they came in there, and so they got to the idea of like, this is what it is. We get $35,000 and we got to move up to the Midwest, and they wanted to get away from hurricanes. And so that was they didn't know any better. Yeah. Looking back on that now, it's like, I so badly wish I would have been able to help somebody like that out. That's why I love what I do, is because when you have somebody that with a catastrophic event that takes place of a hurricane or a tornado or whatever it may be that basically swipes away your whole entire life. And we're not talking just the house and the bed and the, you know, the walls and the carpet and stuff like that. That stuff you miss. It's not that you, when you look at a family or you deal with somebody or a client or something like that, when it comes into play, it's you're missing. I mean, you're missing your bike, you're missing your family photos, you're missing all that type of stuff. Not
the non-replaceables.
Yeah, the non-replaceables. That's where I love helping somebody out in that aspect of being able to really connect with a client, connect with a homeowner or a business owner, and help them get back to whole or a previous lost state when it comes to that, you know, date of loss or that hurricane or tornado. That's the biggest thing why I wanted to get into this industry. Coming from the law enforcement world and firefighter world, that was something that I loved doing and loved working with. And then coming into this, where it's you get to deal with those catastrophic events, you get to go to ground zero, you get to go see all that stuff happen, and then, you know, make them whole again and make sure that they get everything that they need to get. But then also you create that relationship and that bond with that person over the course of, you know, could be 3 months, could be 9 months. But, you know, you get to meet a lot of cool people along the way, and that's why I love doing what I'm doing.
I'll tell you what, man, you know, I've like I said, I've been in the trades for a while now, and you really meet some interesting people when you're out dealing with the general public, and you really get to travel, you know, and you get to see, and you know, Mikey, I know you're going to love this. I get to see my country. You know, right. I get to go to Florida. I've lived in California, Northern California for that matter. You know, I was able to travel around. I'm obviously from Chicago, if you can't tell from the thick Chicago accent. You know, I've lived in this guy. You know, I lived in Dallas, Texas, you know, for a year and a half, Orlando, Florida for a year and a half. And like you said, I'm currently located in Denver. And I mean, you just really get to travel around, and, you know, I mean, you meet some just super people. And, you know, there's something I kind of wanted to touch on that you were talking about, bringing somebody back to, you know, the pre-loss condition, right? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about how earlier that Kyle, you know, got into it because he was offered, I think it was like $6,800 to go through and make some replacements or some repairs. And, you know, for a lot of folks out there, you don't really, you know, I want to have you kind of elaborate on this, is that, you know, why is it important to understand, you know, what's being paid versus what is actually owed? And in the contract, also really commonly known as the policy, you know, what are some of the common terms and languages in there that really outline, like, hey, you know, this is what should be paid versus what's actually paid, and also to kind of parlay on that. I mean, one thing that I've always understood is that, you know, the insurance companies generally, in my experience, want to do the right thing. They want to do the right thing. They want to take care of the client, but also they write policies. They don't understand construction. They don't understand the building code for that matter. And that's where a lot of the times where the contractor or yourself really step in, because it's just, hey, let's share some knowledge together. So, you know, let's talk about, you know, as far as like what's paid and what's versus owed, and why is that important to understand? Right.
So, I mean, I think the biggest thing is an insurance carrier, they have great marketing. You know, that's what I'm going to say first. Yeah, you know, like a good neighbor, you're in good hands, whatever it may be. That's always first and foremost of what they're going to say, and that you're going to be taken care of. And a lot of these people, they know their agents, or they've, you know, they went to high school or college, or they grew up with them, so they trust them. And you should trust your agent if he's a good buddy of yours. I agree with you. The unfortunate part is he's not actually. It's not that he's not there to help you, because he is, and I will never say that. I'm friends with one of my good friends is a State Farm agent. The part
Don't
of
let
it,
him see the podcast.
Yeah, no. If he sees it, which I hope he does, I mean, he'll understand what I'm saying too. He takes care of his clients, he really does. And the agents out there, they're good guys, they're good folks, they're good gals, and they do take care of their clients. And I'm not saying that. The part of it though is there's a tactic that they have, and it's the truth. There's books out on it. Whatever you want to look up, it's out there. It's called delay, deny, and defend. It's a contract between you and the carrier. So between you and whatever insurance carrier that you do own at that time, that's what they're going to put in there. So the number one thing I always ask a client or an insured or a customer or, you know, somebody that I'm partnering with, whether it's a property management group, whatever it may be, do you have an ACV or an RCV policy? That's going to be the first and foremost thing that I have. Honestly, I can't tell you how many roofs that your company brings me, that other companies bring me, that other contractors bring me. And first thing I always ask, ACV or RCV. Why do you ask that question? Well, I have a fiduciary responsibility to the property and also to the insured, whether or not if you should file a claim or not. Now, if it's catastrophic, you're filing a claim. That's kind of no questions asked. But If it's light hail damage or something along the lines of that, if it's ACV, I'm probably going to tell you not to file. And I can't tell you how many times I was telling you this story the other day, working with the property management group. Some contractors went out there, you need a whole new roof, file a claim. Well, if you file a claim, I'm only going to be able to get you $150,000, and these quotes are for $300K. If it's ACV, you're only getting half of what this roof is actually worth.
Right.
And so is it in your best interest to file a claim? And then at that point, that's a question that we need to make an educated decision on together as a team. I need to tell you all of the facts that you have in your policy. You need to make sure, and I need to make sure what's in your policy so I can tell you this is what's going to happen, best case scenario, okay? I don't look at it that way. I almost look at it almost as a worst case scenario, because in this industry, in our industry, and you can attest to this, people don't mind negatives, and I'll tell you that up front. I'll tell you a negative. I'll hit you with it, and because I want you to know what can happen or what could happen.
Well, you're setting expectations.
Right.
And that's the big thing. Like,
right.
Even on my birthday, I don't like surprises. Yeah. I don't, right? I'm not a big birthday guy to begin, this, but but this is great that you're bringing this up, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is something I was just thinking about, is that, one of the beautiful things that I really like about, having a network of folks like yourself that I really trust and work with, is that when I do have clients' portfolios, like some of the I'm not going to drop names, but some of the people we're working with here,
right,
is that they contact you and they say, "Hey, Jordan, I've got a new policy, I've got a new carrier. Can you look at it? Can you review it? Can you let me know what I'm working with?" Right. And what that gives you, and I know that you've got a myriad of brokers and things that you work with, but what Jordan will do for one of our clients is that he'll put together the policy report card, which is super unique. Like, I love that. It's easy to understand. It's easy to digest. It's like, hey, and for any roofers that are listening to this, as everybody knows, we are legally not allowed to discuss policy, which, for that matter, trust me, you don't want somebody like me reading your policy. You don't. It's not going to be good. Thanks, Jordan. Appreciate the vote of confidence here, but nonetheless, we partner up, and and it's like, hey, do you have anybody that that can do this? I said, well, hey, I've got a couple people. Here's who I recommend, and they reach out, they call you, they talk, and you do this policy report card, and it outlines, like, hey, like, this is just what you're looking at. Right. This is your policy. Hey, here's what your deductible is. Right. Here's your exclusions. These are the things you need to be worried about. So that way, because ultimately in the building life cycle management that you and I have been putting together, and I work with, within my own company to build, is the importance of setting the stage, right? So we hope there's not a hailstorm. I hope that I just come up there and I do a fluid applied membrane every 10 or 15 years. I give you your NDL or your no dollar limit warranty, and I'll see you in a year or two. Right. And we'll go out, we'll do your annual inspection stuff. But if something does happen, right, you got to be prepared. And there was one situation, I actually think you might remember this one. This is actually out in Denver, Colorado. I think it was a year or two ago. And I was working with a client, and he had a closed cell foam coating on the roof over built up. And this thing was, he got hit with very large hail, and it was leaking, and it was all sorts of problems, all these issues. And he says, hey, look, I want to go through and file a claim. So I said, well, before you do that, do you know what you have in your policy? Right. Are you aware? He says, no. I said, okay, cool. Here's somebody I recommend you reach out to, and you should have them help you out on that aspect of things, because I don't want to create a liability. Right. And when I say that, what I mean is that there's been particular situations, especially in Texas, claims you and I have worked together, is that if a client goes through and has a hail exclusion and the roof gets hit with hail, and they say, well, you know what, I'm going to just go ahead and file a claim because I'm going to get a free roof or whatever they think, which obviously is not the case, but they'll file the claim, and then they find out they have a hail exclusion. The claim gets denied. The carrier drops the client, because now the roof is uninsurable because it's sustained damage. And now you have no insurance. And if you have a mortgage on the building, that's a serious problem.
SOL.
Exactly. So, when I was dealing with this client, obviously I called up Jordan and said, hey, I've got somebody that's interested. He's going to reach out. So he reached out, and the guy had an ACV policy, which basically means it's a depreciated amount, 50%, give or take, is what it's going to be paid out. His older roof. He had co-insurance and a hail exclusion. And I said, man, if you file a claim on this thing, you're going to owe the insurance company money.
Sure. That's the hard part. That's what I'm saying. Where it's you got people don't mind negatives, but they mind surprises. If you and I sit here and tell them, hey, let's file a claim, let's get this thing bought, we're going to do this. I'm not doing my part as a PA. You're not doing your part as a roofer. Or you, in fact, I mean, you're wasting your own time. I'm wasting my time.
Of course.
But we're wasting the client's time.
And we're hurting everybody's reputation.
Everybody. And that's what I don't like. I hate when I come on to something or I get a phone call, it's typically from a different contractor. Yeah, I think we're large enough now where we get to kind of pick and choose who we work with.
Of course. We do our due diligence too. I mean, when everybody's new into the industry, they're just slinging paper.
And let's file. We're going to get this bought. Because, we'll make more money with insurance proceeds. It's like, no, that's not how that's going to work. And so then we'll get somebody who's real to the game and they'll come to us and they'll say, well, here's what we're looking at. And it's like, why did this guy file this claim? That's honestly the question that I'm asking right now. It's like, well, he was told to before by a different contractor.
Right.
And it's like, unfortunately, I'm going to probably have to set you up or give you some contacts to some brokers that I know that can probably help you out to get a new carrier. There ain't no way, though, you're getting this covered through insurance. Not because there's not damage here. I'm not saying there's not damage here. The policy that you have, the contract that you made between you and your carrier, there's no way they're going to pay for this because they have every exclusion in your policy to basically make you not be able to pay for it.
Right.
And that's the hardest part, to have that conversation. It's in layman's terms, it sucks to have that call.
I've heard that
because
before.
The way you make money is by putting a roof on. The way I make my money is getting a roof approved. And also the client is happy because they get a new roof on their building or their house or whatever.
It's a circle of life, baby.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the hard part. And so like you have to really be able to take a look at it. You have to have those hard conversations sometime where when you're talking with an insured and you're going to say, look, I'm going to have to advise you not to file a claim.
Yep.
On your policy. And they always kind of give you that side eye look of like, why, this is how you get paid. And I'm like, yeah, but I still have a fiduciary responsibility to yourself and to the property that if I tell you to do that, there's no way I'm going to be able to get you any sort of funds released from the carrier to be able to put this on. It's not going to benefit you. It's not going to benefit your property. And it's honestly not going to benefit any policies going forward because they're going to know you have damage there. And so I want to make sure that you're set up for the best educated decision moving forward. Also, that you have a better policy the following year, because if I can help prevent that, or if, it may, typically the policies that I look at anywhere between $6,000 to about $45,000. I know that's a huge range, but I deal with a lot of different buildings. You can deal with an outpost barn or whatever it may be where there's nothing inside of it. It's a lot of metal, but there's nothing to it. And you're probably looking at about $10,000 or $15,000 that it's going to cost to insure this. Or then you look at a church where there's, you not only have the outbuilding and you not only have the siding and the roofing and the guttering and the windows and everything else that's on the outside of it, the exterior of it, but also the interior. You have all your drywall, you have all your carpet, you have your pews, you have your crosses, you have,
any type of electronics, fire suppression,
everything that's going to go into it.
Yeah.
That's where the big range is difference wise, but you're going to need to get a carrier that's going to understand that. Yeah, you're going to pay more. I mean, that's okay. So if something does happen to your property and you need to file a claim, you're going to want more insurance for it. You can never have a minimal amount of insurance that you need. I mean, a lot of people, they look at it where it's like, well, I'm just going to go, the bank says I'm required to get insurance. I'm going to go get insurance, but I want the cheapest insurance. That is not in your best interest.
Right.
And I will say that, and until the day I die, you're always going to want to get a little bit more. I mean, the insurance that I have on my property, it's not the most expensive, but it's not the least expensive.
Well, you're just making sure that you have adequate coverage.
Correct.
And that's a big thing. I mean, there's been some times where I've gone through and, for example, Hurricane Ian. How many people didn't have flood insurance? A tremendous amount.
Half of them, it felt like.
Half of them, and that's the type of thing that you really got to think about. It's like, hey, look, if I'm in a particular area that normally doesn't get floods, but if I'm on a peninsula that's in the middle of the ocean, maybe it might be a good idea, and it's the little stuff like that. And, I really like what you talk about is that it's you want to make sure that you insure yourself for the worst case situation because that's what it is. It's insurance. You're going to be covered. Right. And the big thing is that, this is all just to prepare, you don't have really, really great health insurance thinking that, hey, I'm going to go out and go on a bender this weekend and pray to God nothing bad happens. It's like, I have good health insurance because I want to have a good, long, healthy life. And God forbid something happens, right? I take care of my body. I mean, it's rip for podcast, Bug. You know what I'm saying? But it's, you take care of your body, you take care of your building, you have a maintenance program, you put all this stuff in. The insurance is just icing on the cake, right? And in the event that something does have to happen, making sure that you're properly covered, making sure that you have adequate, you're okay with your deductible, right? I mean, I'll give you an example. I was working with a property out in Texas, and it was I want to say 700, 800,000 square foot building. They did like Amazon distribution stuff. I mean, it was crazy. It wasn't Amazon for that, so you guys know, but it was a distribution center for them that it was like a third party. And they go, I said, so we sit down, I said, yeah, you've got a tremendous amount of damage, a lot of leaks, a lot of stuff was impacted on the interior. So we're going through all the different steps here. And, they're like, yeah, well, our deductible's about $1 million. And I go, okay. They're like, yeah, I mean, but that's no big deal. Hey, cool. That's for them, right? But I've had some customers that say, hey, my deductible's $3,000, right? So, I mean, what's the point of having a good insurance package, right? Because that's what it is at the end of the day. Just like a roof isn't just a roof, it's a roofing system. You've got your substrate, you've got your decking, you've got your membrane over the top, you've got your coat. Everything fits together as one. So usually when you have your building insurance, you've got lost business, right? Loss of wages, all this stuff is packages. So you have a business insurance package. If there's a portion of it that you don't understand, right, and that you're not okay with, that could be a problem. So one thing that I really like that you do, for a lot of our clients we have is that you review the policy annually. Yep. Right? And why is that important?
Policy report card. You're going to purchase a building. You're going to ask for an inspection. Okay. You're going to buy a car. You're going to look at the Carfax. Okay.
Not the Carfax.
Not the Carfax.
That's right.
If you're going to get insurance, why not have somebody review it for you?
Right.
And me, you send me policies all the time. I don't make a dime off of it. I do it because I like you. I don't know why, but I do it because I like you. I do it because I like
my eyes.
Yeah. I want to take care of the client. I want to take care of your clients because eventually at some point they'll probably become a client of mine. But also on top of that, I love to have a connection, whether if it's Omaha, Nebraska, Dallas, Texas, Orlando, Florida, shout out to Drake,
and
Holden. But, you get a policy, you're talking 200 some pages. I mean, I would love to bet somebody $100 that ever listens to this. Tell me what's in your insurance policy for your car or for the home that you live in right now. Oh, yeah. Whether if it's a renter policy or whether if it's your actual dwelling, your homeowner's policy, nobody could tell you. I mean, can I tell you on mine? Yeah, because I do it for a living. But can anybody consciously tell me what's actually in there? What is actually covered? Is it ACV? Is it RCV? Do you have some sort of exclusion? Do you have 80% co-insurance? Do you have 100% co-insurance? Do you have some sort of endorsement that only gives you 25% of your ACV up front comparatively to the whole recoverable depreciation on the back end? These are little things that you just don't know about that they slide in there and you don't have that realization of it. That's what I'm saying. If you're going to purchase a property and you have a broker and brokers are great, but you have a broker that comes and brings you something, you need to read through that. But you also need to have somebody that says, hey, this is what this actually means and breaks it down.
Yeah, put it in the layman's terms. I mean,
I'm not a guy that's going to, act like that I know it all because I don't. But you know what I get? I get layman's terms and I get if this happens, this happens.
Yeah, cause and effect.
If and I'd rather be proactive with it than reactive. But if you get hail, this is what's going to happen. Back in 2020, when we got the derecho storm, nobody had. I mean, we had a Cat 3 hurricane in the Midwest.
Yeah,
we got a guy that works.
I think it was like 700 and some linear miles.
Unreal. And we got a guy that works at our company, and I mean, he was he had claims left and right. I mean, just pouring into him. He was almost like saying, like, hey, guys, like, I can't take on anymore.
Pump the brakes.
Yeah, I had to do it. And I always joke with them, and I'm like, you're the luckiest person in the world doing what you do.
Yeah.
Because, you had a Cat 3 hurricane happen in your backyard, and you live in Iowa.
Right.
And he always jokes, and he was like, it was unreal though. Like the amount of stuff that I read through people's policies out there, it's like some of them were covered, some of them weren't. It was vague. They didn't know because it had never happened before.
Right.
And so, that is when I say people don't mind negatives, but they do mind surprises. If you have somebody just review your policy when you go and purchase a property, a house, whatever it may be,
right? You're
aware. And so if it happens, you're like, I know what to do. I know what's in here.
Well, here's the thing: is that you're a third party too,
right?
You're not financially incentivized. You have as this is like the Jordan Poehling catchphrase, the fiduciary responsibility.
Hired gun.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Is that you work for the client, right? So the way I look at it is like when you go and I want to make this very clear too that in any industry, if it's automotive, if it's if it's roofing, if it's public adjusting, if it's anything, you're going to have people that don't have experience and you're going to have people that have experience. And Jordan, do you know what we say?
It matters.
It matters. Experience does matter, right? So, I think a lot of the times when we're working with some of these policies, when the information's put in there, I think that a lot of it's just like you're trying to do somebody a favor. Like if I'm a new business owner and I come in and I'm like, hey, Joey Bag of Donuts, I need a policy, and
right.
I sell mostaccioli out of this warehouse and that's what I do. And that's what I look at. But I just started the business. I don't have any money. And he's saying, I'm going to save Nick some money. So, hey, look, we'll do an exclusion here or an endorsement there. And yeah, your deductible is going to be a little bit higher, but we've never had a hailstorm here before. And you really start, you put it together and you give me the policy. And I'm just like, hey, I'm a new business owner. All I'm doing is looking at the price.
Mm-hmm.
So in a situation like that, in a lot of them, people are just trying to do them a favor. And when you're looking at somebody that's been in the industry as long as, myself or you or Kyle or
right.
some, or Reichel, some of these other guys that we've dealt with, you look at the long-term loss that people sustain. And when you're dealing with a natural disaster, because with the Enzo event that's going on, with the La Nina transitioning to El Nino and all the science that's behind that, we've had a very crazy year, right? And as that's happening, the last thing as a property owner that I would want to deal with, and you and I both own property, right? The last thing I would want to deal with is not only did I lose my business or did I lose my home or did I lose this? Now I have to come up with $800,000, or I found out that I have a flood exclusion like in Hurricane Ian, and they're like, hey, sorry, and that's what really makes this job important and impactful in my opinion, especially with what you do. Because like I said, it took me I want to say 7 days to read my articles of incorporation when I formed my company. It was like 15 pages. I've got 8, but that's why bringing in people like yourself who are not only qualified, but understand that type of business. It's certified across the country, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So, there's only 2 states, I think, that you can't use the PA, right? It's
a little bit more than that, but yeah.
Yeah. So 2, 6, 8, whatever it is. But, for the most part, bringing in somebody like yourself, like Premier, whoever it may be, it just kind of sheds out. And correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the time to just review a policy, look at it, there's no charge for that, right?
No, not at all. We're going to look at a policy, and like I said, you typically get the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yeah. You get a good policy. It's RCV. There's no exclusions on it. It's going to cover your hail and wind. Hopefully you see some sort of deductible where it's under $25,000, depending on how big the policy or depending on how big the property is, and then you kind of get the bad / this isn't that bad, but there's an exclusion on it. There could be a higher deductible, maybe $100,000 or more. That's something that the insurance coming out of pocket on. Yeah. But you got to make that up front. You got to make that clear to them. They're going to be filing a claim. You're going to be responsible for X amount of dollars. because that's, the days of like, hey, let me just kind of scoot it in here for you and I'll take care of your policy. That day is gone.
Mm-hmm.
Carriers are checking, they're making sure that they're looking for it. So I make that clear to them up front as well too. And then you get, the ugly where it's, you have an ACV, you have a percentage deductible or something along the lines of that. And it's,
which is real big in Texas too.
It's big in Texas. It's huge in Florida.
Really?
Oh, it's huge in Florida. You get half the hurricane policies that were reviewed this year. It's anywhere between 1% to 5% deductible.
Well, remember, and I know you know this, but for those you guys out there, you have different types of deductibles, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So you've got a hurricane deductible, which is generally a percentage.
Yep.
And then, obviously I don't want to get in trouble talking about it, but you've got different types of deductibles, right?
Yeah. And I mean, not to say you'd get in trouble talking about it. I mean, it's good to know if you're a contractor, you got to know how to be able to read. You got to be able to, if you're a contractor and you're not going to use a PA, guys, get on YouTube, take a class, take a course, whatever it may be on how it is to read a policy. I know a lot of you guys out there know this, and I know a lot of you guys, out there have your own, house or property or probably own some sort of
something of asset.
Something that you have an insurance on. Guys, read it, understand it, know how it works. If you guys want to get a PA involved with it, get a PA involved with it. I'm going to always tell you that. I mean, but you got to know what you're looking at. And if you see some percentage deductible, just know whatever you take for the dwelling amount, that how much is insured for, take that, times it by 5. That's what your deductible is. That's what we were dealing with in the hurricane. When I'm sitting there on the phone with folks, or I'm sitting there meeting them in person, I'm going to say, hey, you're looking at a $250,000 deductible. Now, you got a huge building.
Right.
So I'm going to get you $6 or $7 million because all of this is damage. You have, business interruption, whatever it may be. You're going to be looking at quite a bit of funds released to replace all of this. Yes, I get that. But you're still going to be coming out of pocket a tremendous amount of money. And people always think, oh, I mean, insurance will take care of it. No, they won't. Like you're still going to have to come up with something. So set something aside. Right. Because sooner or later, that's going to be an obligation. Down the road, that's going to be something that everybody's going to have to do, not just, the few.
So there's a common misconception. And I remember you were talking about earlier, say, the days of this are over. The days of that are older. And, in basically what it is that there's just not as many loopholes. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, right? And I think Hurricane Katrina really is what tightened that up. Yeah. It really tightened it up because a lot of people got first and final payments and then they just bailed. And they go, okay, and the insurance company is like, well, we just gave you all this money to rebuild your property. They're like, yeah, no. I don't want to rebuild my house. I don't want to rebuild this. And so now they do 2 separate payments, right? So you've got your ACV, which is your actual cash value, correct, the value of that particular loss depreciated by the age and value of it currently, right? Mm-hmm. And then you've got your second payment, which is the RCV. So it makes up the replacement cost value if you have an RCV policy for that matter. So, they do that particularly to make sure that the work's getting done, right? So if I go out there and Jordan tells me, hey, Nick, this is an RCV policy. They're going to pay for whatever it takes to replace it, to bring it back to pre-loss conditions. Great, Jordan. Cool. Sounds good. It's going to be $800,000. Okay. We've got to do this. We've got to do that. But they're only going to give you $350,000 or $400,000 up front. Okay. So that $350,000, $400,000 comes in. Now, me as the contractor, I have to float the rest of the money. Yep. It's not like we're making, 80% profit on these deals. Like, no, you're making your money on your O&P, so you've only got a 10 to 20% markup depending on what you negotiate. Correct. So, when you're dealing with these bigger projects, you've got to have a company that's got the horsepower and the liquidity and basically the accounts with the different manufacturers like GAF and ABC and your supply warehouses across. We have most of our own supply, in-house with us. But so you've got that whole thing set up. And then at the end, we have to, when we submit the COC or certificate of completion, okay, I also have to submit a finalized invoice. Now, what we were talking about, you said the days of 3 bids are over, correct, right? And here's why. And I agree with you 100%. And a lot of folks said, because you got to remember, filing an insurance claim in a lot of states isn't common. I mean, you Florida with hurricanes, Louisiana. I don't know why anybody. I mean, you're just getting wiped off the map every 3 or 4 years.
It's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
Yeah, when you're dealing with,
it's why you see policies down there that are not very favorable to insureds.
Right, and then you look at like Chicago though, that'll get hit every 10 years, every 20. So when these new laws change, a lot of folks aren't up to date with them. So
Correct.
when I go through and I get the 350 or 400 up front and say, okay, cool. I perform, 800 grand worth of work. Okay. Come out of pocket, pay the money, do the stuff. And let's say that you're, Casper Milk Toast, the property owner, and you go, okay, well, I got a bid from so-and-so to do it for 300 grand or 400 grand. If you do that, when you submit your final invoice, okay, or 500 or whatever it is, the carrier's not going to say, well, we quoted you originally 750, but you were savvy and you got it done for 500. So we'll just give you the extra money for free. Good job. No, the insurance company is only going to pay what you spent
Correct.
to do the property. So a lot of folks think, hey, I can go in and, the insurance company quoted at 800 grand. If I can get it done for 6, I'm going to make 200 G's. And Jordan, what's that called?
Insurance fraud.
Right. And do we engage in insurance fraud?
That is something I don't do.
Probably not a good idea, right? Second thing is like the deductible thing, like you were talking about. So in Texas, I don't know if you heard the story. This is whoever did this. Sorry, I'm going to tell your story. It's kind of embarrassing, but there was a situation where a client, and a contractor out there said, because the Texas are very big on the deductibles. Like, I mean, you have to send.
Texas is tough but fair. I'll say it till the day.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why a lot of people are moving there too, right?
I love it.
Yeah, I love Texas too. I love Dallas. It's fantastic.
They give you a shot of bourbon and a handgun when you move there.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I actually bought a pistol at a gas station once. No, I'm just kidding. but either way, the client went through and engaged in insurance fraud with the contractor. The contractor says, you've got to write me a check for the deductible. And because in Texas, this may be hearsay or not, but this is how the story goes, is that the guy went through and deposited the check and then wrote the client back a check for the deductible. Now, in order for the carrier, the insurance company, to release the depreciation to make the contractor whole plus supplementation, all that stuff, they had to submit a copy of the check from the client and the deposit receipt into their account for the deductible. And that's fair. The contractor, who was really smart, sent back the check they wrote to the customer for the deductible to the carrier. And to my knowledge, they both did 5 years.
Stupid is, stupid does.
Yeah.
That's what that is to me.
Well, it's like, look, man, I mean, at the end of the day, you're paying for insurance to insure your property, which is an asset, and you're engaging in, generally, we're talking about commercial primarily, this is a give and take, right? Like, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars to insure this property. And if the property is damaged, then you're going to pay to fix it. And here's my, I just picked up new health insurance the other day, copay. Here's my copay.
Right.
Here's my deductible. Here's my portion I'm going to contribute.
We'll try to get around it entirely too much when it comes to the deductible. I don't do residential anymore. I started off my career.
You graduated.
Doing that. Yeah, I've graduated. I've gotten to the point where I only do commercial. So it's been good. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of phone calls, a lot of late nights, early mornings. But back when I started, it was easy to, for these guys when they said, like the contractor, like, I'll just, I'll deal with it. It's like, you want to deal with it? Sure, man. But like, I'm telling them they have to pay their deductible. Talking about a $500 to $1,500 deductible. When you get into the $150,000 deductibles, you're not making that go away.
Right.
The carrier's going to see if you paid it, if you didn't pay it, and you got to do the right thing.
Well, there's not even enough room in the deal to make that go. You can't just
not enough funds there to do so.
Yeah, you can't just eat 150. It's just like somebody's got to pay that
Going
money.
back to the 2 trucks in a truck, it's like, well, how can we eat this up? And it's like, how can you eat up 150 grand when it comes to a roof?
Oh, easy. You cut corners and you stop. So
100%.
So
you do things that aren't correct.
So I want you to talk about a little bit what the benefit of Xactimate is and how that equalizes the playing field for everybody.
So carriers use Xactimate.
And what is it?
All right. So Xactimate's a software that basically you're going to plug in a roof, the dimensions, what is on it, and it's going to spit out a number for you. Okay. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter if your roof, I'm going to use the example I kind of always use with everybody. I'm from Omaha, Nebraska. Typically, it's a little bit cheaper living here than it is everywhere else. It's in the Midwest. It's simple life. We love it here. Okay. the roof that it costs, whether if it's, 1,000 squares or 200 squares of metal, it's going to be the same price that it is to be put on in Omaha, Nebraska, that it is going to be in Manhattan, New York. Everybody thinks New York is bigger, better, and badder. It's going to cost more to do this. No, that's not how that's supposed to work. My roof should be the same price that it is, or I should get the same funding or the money released from the carrier just because I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, even if you're in Manhattan, New York.
So if I'm in Manhattan, New York, and I'm obligated to use union roofers, would you say that would impact it?
Union's a little bit different. You should have the same number, but unions are just, in my experience, I guess I would say, I don't deal with too many unions. It does matter. I don't deal with too many unions here in Omaha, Nebraska, but I do deal with them, and I've dealt with them tremendously amount in St. Louis, Missouri.
Really?
Yeah.
In St. Louis?
Yes. They are.
I've done it in Hammond. I had a job out there that was very interesting, but I got a call at the last minute. It's like, hey, are you using union contractors? I go, well, no. I said, well, we're union. Yeah, we're a union shop. So the build was supposed to happen in 2 days. It was a $800,000 or $900,000 deal or whatever. And they go, yeah, if you're not using union contractors, then we're going to strike and we're going to close down the business. And I was working with Boris at the time, and he's looking, he's like, yeah, it's going to increase the cost of the job to like $75,000 or $80,000. So I didn't know if there was a difference, because I'm not an exactive expert. I could barely read, but for that matter, I just wasn't sure if there was some type of different allocation in there for I'll be full disclosure here. I don't deal with too many union guys. Yeah. Because thank you for being honest. At least a lot of people just like,
I don't. And it's not because I don't want to. I think they're great guys. I got union iron workers that I'm buddies with, and I deal with the little guy, man. Yeah. I deal with the guy that's out there trying to make a buck, hustling as hard as he can, and that he's hitting it as hard as he can. Those union guys, they get taken care of. They get those bids. They get a lot of retail work. That's not my world. It's not, and I'm never going to say that it is. I am, at the end of the day, helping somebody who has storm restoration damage.
Yeah. And so you're more just concerned about the client and getting them the right amount of,
I can't tell you how many people come to me. I can't tell you. I mean, so if you ever, just for everybody out there, if you're listening to this, okay, you want to get a PA involved. I love how when someone comes to me and they always say, hey, I'm at the 12th hour, I'm on the 10-yard line and we're short. Can you get involved? It's like, what do you want me to do, man? Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you want me to go against an engineer report, 2 inspections that have already happened.
And you're coming into the end of the game.
Like, you guys, no time to prep. You guys are here. I mean, everybody's involved. Everybody's basically, they're shot. You've either been denied or underpaid, or, your contractor's got an estimate of $400K and you got $198K release. It's like, hey, help me out. And it's like, I can help you. Don't get it twisted. I will come in and I will help you. I will use code. I will use the policy to your advantage, whatever it may say. But it's hard to come in, and it costs a lot of money and not up front, because like we said, we're 100% performance based. We adopted that model because we want to be able to prove ourselves. Right. I'm never going to say, hey, I'm going to do all this work, and at the end of it, I didn't get any money released. Hey, by the way, you still owe me $30,000. Like, that's not going to be my pitch. And it's not going to what I'm going to do to you at the end of it, because I really wouldn't be valuable to anybody. But if you get me involved from the beginning, and if you let me set the stage, you let me go out and do my inspection the night before or the day before, where I know exactly where we're going to look. Right. Because if you got damage over here on the south side of the wall or the south side of the roof, and the whole entire inspection is done over on the north side, that's like, yeah, that's great. Let's flip it around. Typically, I'd probably say 90% of the north side of the roof takes the most damage, because that's where the sun hits the most. So if it's EPDM or PVC,
it's dried out.
Yep. So you're going to have, you take a PVC roof, you're going to have more spiral cracking on that side of the roof. Okay. I just had one the other day. We were in Kansas City. It was obliterated by hail, and we're talking good size hail. Okay. That's why this roof took on this damage, but also the fact that it took on all of the sun on the north side of the roof with the west facing wall, where it was just beating on it all day. So
it was
expansive,
a perfect storm. I mean, it was.
Yeah, it was. But you look at the other side of the roof, and there's on the if you don't know what you're looking for, looks to be no spiral cracking. There's no hits. AC units are blasted, but there's no visual damage on the roof. Bunch of spatter, right? And so I'm getting brought in 6 months after the fact, though. And they're like, do your magic. And it's like, what do you want me to do, man?
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna have to have this engineer come back out, basically call him an asshole, tell him he's wrong because he was being abrasive up front with you.
Yeah.
And, you know, my whole rule is when I meet an engineer out there, hey, man, let's get on the roof safe. Let's get off the roof safe. There's no fighting up here. There's no arguing up here. I'm going to prove you're wrong because that's why I'm here. And I know there's damage up here because there's about $180,000 worth of AC units that you can't even put a credit card through.
Right, and realistically, you wouldn't have taken on the claim unless you had validated ahead yourself.
I don't. We've gotten to the side. We've gotten to the point where we're a big enough size where we can kind of pick and choose the ones we want.
Right.
And it's not to saying that we're sitting here cherry picking this or cherry picking that. I don't want to take on a roof with a bad policy that's never going to get paid out because it's going to be a waste of time for the insured, for the contractor, and for myself.
So we were talking about this earlier about how when we get into those situations, it's much better to kind of go into the life cycle management. And I'm going to use that word a lot where it's like, hey, look, you've got brokers you work with, you know, you write the policy report card, and instead of going through and saying, hey, let's just sign this and let's throw a Hail Mary and let's see what's going on. I'd say, hey, look, you know what, unfortunately, the policy's no good. You know, you link somebody up with, you know, hopefully with me or another contractor or whatever, say, hey, look, this guy could do a couple of repairs. We could get the roof going, make sure you don't have any leaks. But then what we'll do is we'll rebuild the policy. Let's get you in touch with this broker or that broker, whoever your person is that you use. And then that way, in the event something happens again, because in Omaha, I mean, you know, I've got a couple of claims out here. I mean, hail that happened. Was it July of last year? June of last year?
June 7th.
June 7th. It was so exact. Okay, Mr. Exactman over here. You know, but it put a hole through 24 gauge PBR. Mm-hmm. It was that big, right? And you know, was it 3 or 4 years before that? So there's always going to be another thing that can happen. And you know, I mean, the goal is to really make sure the property's secured. And make sure that the customer is insured and make sure that they've got people that are aligned with them that have a fiduciary responsibility, in your words, to make sure that, hey, look, like at the end of the day, I hope you never have to file an insurance claim. I mean, I
really don't.
Right. But like if it happens, you know, and again, I'll use this reference again. I was just shopping for health insurance yesterday, you know, and I was on the phone for like 45 minutes and I was okay, well, what about this? And I travel. So he's the PPOs and all that. And I had to learn. Like I didn't know, you know, but I had a guy that, that was just absolutely super that took the time, explained it because I'm a little slow sometimes, so he's got to do the screen share and all the different stuff. But I went in depth because if anything, you know, and I've actually, you know, I got a girlfriend at home. I got stuff, you know, we got a cat, you know, somebody's going to pay for the stuff. Adventure cat. That's right. Little Tyson, baby. Yeah. So I'll bring him next time for the girls. I promise.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, I know. I know they were real upset about that. You know, but that's things I looked into it and it, you know, it's like you were saying about how if the mortgage company says you have to have a minimal coverage, you know, you'll only do this. It's amazing to me, right, that people really don't, and I just think it's because they don't really understand it or they don't really get it or there's so much other going on because they're buying a building or whatever, you know. But like I think it's kind of cool or interesting that what the loan industry does for automobiles, right? If I'm going to buy a Corvette or I'm going to buy a Toyota Prius or opposite ends of the spectrum, but either way, right? You know, you have to have full coverage.
Right.
You don't have a choice because that is the bank's asset. Bank owns that. And that's a big misconception. A lot of people think like, well, it's my building. Do you have a mortgage on it?
Right.
Not your building. Right. So the bank owns that building. So you should have, you know, not only coverage to protect yourself, protect them. It's all the way across the board to make sure everything's covered. One other thing I wanted to talk about here is which I find interesting. There is a particular situation I want to bring up that I brought you in. I tried to bring you in early because I knew the one in Wyoming.
Cheyenne, yeah.
Yeah, don't you know?
Yeah, don't you know?
Don't you know? So
that was a fun one, though.
It was real good. I mean, you and I'm going to sing your praises here. And normally, I don't like telling people how great they are, but you're fantastic for this because I know you handled this one personally for me as a favor. And we had a facility up there, metal roof. You know, it's a beautiful blue roof, and it was a church. Members of the congregation. They have engineers. They had people that were involved in the insurance community, all the stuff, and they had filed a claim on the building. You know, we went through and said, hey, look. we really think that you should get, and because in my opinion, I mean, anything over a couple $100,000, you really should get a public adjuster involved, just because it can really get complicated. I mean, there's been a few that I've done without, smaller deals, whatever. You know, it's a local insurance company, like you were saying. They're friends with their agent. There was one that I did in Des Moines. Kevin, shout out to you, brother.
I remember that one too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the carrier wrote the check on site. And the guy was super cool. He's like, yeah, this thing's obviously annihilated. I gave him a scope of work. He said, cool, here's your $180,000, build the roof. Done. See you later, bye.
Yeah.
No issues. But this one was obviously a much larger facility, and they're going back and forth with the carrier for 9 months. I said, you really need to get somebody involved. And they go, well, they gave us $10,000. I go, for what? I said, for the gutters. Yeah, we got 10,000, but we have a cosmetic exclusion. And that's why they're not paying for the roof. I said, so they're paying for the gutters? But
that was
you remember this one, right?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, that build is actually happening on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Or Thursday next week. Yeah.
I remember
putting the roof on.
When you went out there, it is, when you said beautiful blue roof, it is a really cool looking church.
Award blue champion medals, by the way.
It is a really cool church. It's whoever designed it, whoever the architect was, I mean, they were thinking outside the box on this one. You had a cosmetic exclusion in there, but you had functional damage. At the end of the day, that's what it came down to. And so carrier came out and they hung their hat on the cosmetic, and they said, you know, hey, we're not paying this, but we're going to pay the gutters. Honestly, looking at that, it was like, I mean, this is golden for me. I was kind of licking my chops over here for it, because it's like, you guys opened up coverage. I mean, you would have had a better shot at completely denying this thing.
Don't give away all the secrets, man.
I mean, give away all you want, and that's kind of what I did there with it, where it's like, yeah, I mean, you can deny it all you want, but you're going to open up some little bit of coverage over here for it. Yeah, you did, but we went out with a microscopic camera, and we figured that and what we found was that the hail actually caused functional damage to the roof, which will then cause rusting.
Right.
We got a gal that quarterbacked this with me. Her name's Dana. Shout out to Dana, because she did a phenomenal job on this. I was actually talking about her, I think Tuesday or Wednesday. I can't remember. One of these mornings I said, build's happening. It was kind of one of those, I'd be like, we got this overturned. We knew we could, just from the damage that was there. But I mean, yeah, it was a fight. We had to sink our teeth into it. Carrier was digging their heels into the sand. They didn't want to move. They didn't want to budge. But at the end of the day, one, it's code, so they had to come up in price. Right. Because what they were going to replace wasn't going to be able to be enough.
Well, and they didn't have ice and water shield on there. I mean, they had a ton of stuff at high temp too.
But they had actual functional hail damage. And the thing is what a lot of people and the guy who owns my company, he'll kill me for saying this. It's like, you don't always need a PA. Yeah. Right. And I'll tell you that. Then the reason I say that is I got a friend of mine in the same industry. He had 4-inch hail. I mean, it was the size of a softball. It felt like. It's. I mean, like
that's gorilla hail.
Not a lot of cannonballs, man. Not a lot of negotiation here of like, is this damage or is this not damage? Yeah. I mean, it shattered windshields in the parking lot of the casino. Whoa. That's what it was. It was a casino that he was on.
That picture you showed me earlier today, right?
It was, yeah. Okay. And so he goes, do you want this one? And I go, I don't know if you're gonna need me on this one. I mean, it's kind of blatant. It looks like like Aaron Judge was hitting baseballs into this parking lot for 4.5 hours. I mean, it was huge. And so, like I said, you don't always need somebody out there, because it's really like, hey, how much is this going to cost to replace? Because there's obvious hail here. Don't juice everything to, make them out of money. But for something like this, when you called me with it, when the insured called me with it, and I love dealing with churches because they want to do the right thing. They always like, I don't want to take advantage of the carrier, whatever it may be. And it's like, we're not taking advantage of the carrier. You guys pay insurance. You guys are getting taken advantage of. They gave you $10,000 for a $250,000, $300,000 roof. Correct me. I can't remember.
235.
Something like that. And at the end of the day, you come back and it's like, you guys have functional damage all over the place. Not this year, next year, or the following, or anything like that. You're going to have these problems when it comes to rusting or something's going to happen and leaking. But in 5, 6, 7 years down the road, your roof's going to be shot. Right. And then you're going to be out of the SAU date, which is suit against us clause, on being able to file a claim. You're never going to be able to file on existing damage. Anytime there is new damage that's going to occur, let's say down in 2027, you get a monster hailstorm that comes in and your roof's already kind of rusting. Carrier can come out and say, which they have done before. So if it's like, oh, that doesn't happen, bullshit. I've seen it many times. Mm-hmm. Well, this is existing damage is the reason the roof is so beat up.
Right.
Well, we filed a claim back in 22, but you didn't cover it. And so then now we're filing a claim in 27. You're saying it's existing damage. So which one is it?
Exactly.
Well, you can't go back to 21, 22. And so now you're just kind of between a rock and a hard place.
Well, now you're in a dogfight, and it's extra expenses. It's
correct.
Engineers, it's architects, it's all this other stuff.
Right.
Meteorologists, specialists,
whatever it may be that's going to come out there with it. That's the conversation you're going to have. And we went back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We got who was it? The county building inspector involved or something along the lines of that. Of the type of metal and is this going to be replaced and is this code? And I mean, we got everybody involved for this one. This is a huge church.
It was.
And everybody, I mean, and size wise, one thing, but like community wise, this was a big church. Everybody wanted to see this win. And that's what kind of made it fun too, because you had everybody on your side. Now prior to this involvement, which is always funny to me, is that every time you get in the congregation, there's always like a brother or an uncle or somebody like, oh, I know roofing. Or I know how to do this. I know how to do that. And then it's like, hey, I got $13,000 released for you. It's like, okay, good job, man. But unfortunately, you're $250K short of what you need to put the roof on.
Well, I remember the original estimate when it was the $10,000, and then they came back. They came back with something else. It was embarrassing when they came back, and I'm looking at the numbers. I go, man. I mean, I would take a 35% loss if I tried to build this. So in essence, the client didn't have enough money. So I remember I got with you, and that's when we started getting everybody else involved and all the stuff, and we were able to get it put through, right? And so I wanted to kind of touch back on Exactament, and then I love the reference that you used, and one thing that I explained, obviously from the automotive industry, is that it's Auto Trader.
Correct.
It's Auto Trader. It's Auto Trader for roofs, right?
Correct.
So whatever they reevaluate it, whether it's monthly or quarterly or whatever the case is. Obviously, the more catastrophic events is going to drive prices. COVID, I know that there was a 300% increase in metal. Like I had 20 squares of decking I had to do. The price went from $750 to like $1,200 or $1,500 a square to do that. So obviously they'll readjust. But the cool thing that I like about Exactament, and that in my company, and I know you guys have people in your company too that are Exactament certified, is that this is a program that was developed by who? Insurance, right?
Carriers.
Exactly. It's made by the carriers. And the purpose of it particularly is to take the bidding war out of it.
Correct.
That's the thing. It's that hey, I'm going to go through and I'm going to price this out. And now that's the thing, is that, you used to have this 3 bid system, all this other stuff. And like, hey, look, people that don't file claims regularly, obviously, hey, that's what you're going to want to do because that's what your brokers say. Maybe your broker's old school too. That's the type of person that asks me like, hey, can you send me over a fax? And I'm like, you want me to run it over in my dinosaur, or how do you want to do this? Right. I mean, this is 2023, bro. So, we operate in a new age where what the main concern is to bring the customer back to pre-loss condition.
Correct.
So what that involves is a scope of work. So the insurance company came out with this, I don't know if it was in like the 90s or the 80s. It's been around for a while now. And if you're dealing with a contractor that doesn't use this program, that is dealing with insurance, you should recommend they get certified, because it's $100. That's it.
If you don't use it, we use it. So just call me.
Yeah, right. Jordan Poehling, everybody. Yeah. So good night. No, but it's interesting because the Exactament is nice because it there's white pages underneath every single line item. So if it's remove and replace, what teams are you having? Are you having demolition teams doing it? Is it RFG? Is it roofing teams? How many dumpsters do you need? Are they 30 yards? Are they 20 yards? How many porta potties are you going to use? How many months are you going to have them? How many weeks? Everything is classified on fair market value. So when you put this together, the carrier goes or the customer says, well, I got a bid. It's an insurance job. I got it for $75,000 less than you. I said, well, are they using Exacto? I said, yes. And then what are they leaving off? What are they leaving off? How else is there another price? Because if I'm going through and I'm saying, I've got to replace this R panel roofing system. And Jordan, you and I have gone over this a lot. When you're doing R panel roofing systems, you pull it off. If you have insulation underneath, you're going to go through, you're going to remove the screws. And then when you re-screw into it, the odds of getting it directly into those screws holes, slim to none. So now you're diminishing the R value. So as a contractor, as a PA, we understand that needs to be done.
Fully replaced.
Right, fully replaced. So if I'm, a truck in a truck, and I go, I'll just take the panel off and put it back on, right? And I do that, can I get it done for cheaper? For sure. How much is that costing you, though, in the long run?
Well, it's a ton. I mean, so I'll give you, for instance, I did an apartment complex last year. It was a windstorm. It ripped. It was 13 different apartment complexes. I think 9 of them had, ripped off panels.
I don't remember building that one for you.
No, it wasn't you. It was... I didn't bring you. No, it's not that I didn't bring you involved. I got brought it from. It was actually a property management group that I work with.
Sure.
And so she came to me, the gal who runs the property, and they said, "Hey, I have 3 different bids." And I was like, "Okay, let me take a look at what you got." The thing is, what blew my mind, it was all across the board. And this is why you want to go out and get bids. Go out and get bids. That's perfectly fine if that's the way you want to do it. If you got a boss who's got a boss that says to do that, and you got to follow code or whatever it may be in that group, that's fine. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's not the way I like to do it. I like to work with one contractor. I like one contractor on the deal. I like to be able to have their input, my team's input. I'm nothing without my team. I'm nothing without my back office. None of us are. Yeah. And so I can say as much as I want till I'm blue in the face about something. But if I hear somebody else say, tweak it, do it this way, I'm going to listen. But the reason I say that is 3 bids is I had one for $98,000. I had one for $192,000. And so that was like, this is across the board. How is everybody so wrong? Well, the guy for $192,000 is Xactimate. The guys for $98,000, they just
put it on a napkin.
Well, I don't
know if have you seen it? I've seen bids on napkins. I've seen
crayon and a napkin in a bar. This is how we're gonna, write this up. And
exactly.
It's like
we're color coding it.
Well, not only that, but it's like, so it's like we're trying to match shingles over here, and they're like, we'll just throw shingles back on, but we'll get $98,000, and it's like, yeah, it's probably going to cost you $30 to do.
Right.
And so, yeah, you'll make a buck off of it, but it's like you are not bringing these people back to pre-loss condition. I'm trying to bring them back to pre-loss condition. So when I'm telling the property management group that I'm working with, it's probably going to be a $200,000 to $250,000 job. Well, we got this guy over here that can do it for $98,000. And it's like that guy. Okay, so let me put it in perspective for you. I got to turn that guy's bid into the carrier.
Yep.
Okay. And so then you told me you could get me $200,000 to $250,000 because it's not that I can get you that. That's what it's going to cost to replace this.
Exactly.
And so if I turn in Joe Blow over here, that's going to be $98,000. What do you think they're going to give me?
Well, not only what do you think they're going to give you, it's which is going to be slim to none.
Yeah.
But also there's 2 things that me as a property owner myself, and also a contractor worry about, because again, with being a long-term, we build the customer. You and I, we're customer for life guy, right? Like when I deal with somebody, it's like, look, you're not going anywhere. I'm going to service you better than anybody's going to service you. I'm going to do it for a fair price if it's retail, and if it's insurance, I'm just going to make sure that you get what you need to replace it. No more nor less. That's what it is. That's how. And and we were talking about this earlier. The commodity. There's 100 million PAs. There's 100 million roofers. There's 100 million Jiffy Lubes. It's a quality of service that you get. That's what differentiates it. But when you're dealing with the $94,000 one for Joe Blow or whatever, there's 2 things that are concerning me. One, what's the insurability going to be on that roof when you put it back to 0? Okay. How about the warrantability? Am I going to have a warranty?
No.
Okay. Is GAF or Versico and wait till I'll get with you later, brother. When we get with these major manufacturers. And, they go up there and say, hey, do I have a material warranty on this? And they go, no, you used half the fasteners. You didn't, there's no wind sheet going around the perimeter. No. You didn't put termination bars in. It's like, there's gotta be a give and take, right? So, when you have, an insurance company that's taking care of it, and realistically, if you're doing it yourself, even doesn't matter whose money you're using. It pays more to spend the appropriate amount to get it done the right way. And then that way you don't have to worry about it.
Nope.
If something goes haywire or down the road, or you have a catastrophic event or whatever it is. I mean, how many times have you seen people go through this? The insurance company comes out and says, hey, I'm not insuring this roof. The reason there's damage because it was installed improperly. Right? I mean, and we operate nationwide, you and I.
I get a lot of guys that come to me and say, hey, there's wind damage all over this roof. And unfortunately, I have to say,
that's bridging.
Yeah, that ain't wind damage.
Yeah.
I hate to say it that way, but that's proper installment.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, well, I mean, it's flapping all over the place because they didn't put the roof on correctly.
Right.
And there's no openings. So a lot of it's in the middle where it's flapping like,
right. You got to find the storm created opening. Where is the
right? But then you got
in?
a lot of guys that don't know. It's like, this has to be wind damage. It's like, no, whoever put this roof on had no idea what the fuck they were doing.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate part, because you look at that and it's like, I can't do anything for you. Your roof is compromised.
Right.
It is.
But not, I mean,
but it's not storm damage. You probably had 67 mile an hour winds. You probably had something along the lines of that. But like, we're not getting to the point now where we're going to be filing a claim. I'm going to have to tell the insured not to file a claim.
Right.
Because this isn't going to be in their best interest, because I know I'm not going to go and start a fight with a carrier on saying that this is wind damage when I know damn well it's not wind damage.
Well, not only that, Jordan, do you think that they're going to renew coverage after they come out there and they evaluate the roof and say, man, this thing is a complete abortion and we don't want anything to do with it? Because, I mean, well, if you look at it, the insurance company, their job, and just like anybody, right? I always relate this back to Along Came Polly with Ruben Pfeffer, right? Okay. They analyze. Ruben. Oh, yeah. Poor Ruben. And when he ate the Indian food. Oh, yeah. But
scuba.
Do you scuba? But and we'll finish up on this because we're getting a little long here, is that, when the insurance company, this thing spins around, the insurance company, their job is to analyze risk, right? And it's just like a casino, right? You're playing the odds, right? So if I'm, Mr. Insurance Company or Mrs. Insurance Company or whatever it is, and I'm in there and it's like, hey, Jordan, I want to insure your building, right? And I'm going to bet that over the next 365 days or whatever the term length is, that nothing bad's going to happen. And every month that something bad doesn't happen, you're going to pay me. Okay. And then when something does go bad though, then I will pay you. I'll pay to get it fixed. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now there's what's known as a policy renewal inspection, which some people are familiar with and some people aren't, but basically the insurance company comes out and they look at the property and they say, do I want to continue to insure this? And if the answer is no, you get a letter in the mail that says, FYI, we're not renewing your coverage.
Yep.
Okay. And look, that's business as much. And that's how it goes. And nobody's trying to.
Because they know the roof's going to be compromised sooner or later when it comes to an actual storm event.
Right. Well, not only that, it becomes a liability. If I go in there and I say, hey, this roof has been improperly installed and, we are going through an Enzo event and the wind variables are really high this year, what's the likelihood of that roof getting ripped off and killing somebody in the parking lot? Right? I mean,
violent, but yeah.
Yeah, it is. We're taking out a bus full of nuns or whatever it is, I mean, I'm just being real here. That type of stuff happens. That's why the Firestone 500 recall happened back in the day.
Yeah.
Right? Back to the tires. So, but either way, if I was a business owner and I said, hey, is this a liability? I'd say, no. I don't want to do that. So, that's why it's important to get your annual inspections done. That's why it's important to make sure that you've got your policy reviewed by somebody like yourself or Premier Claims or whoever it is, right. a trusted public. If you have your own PA, call your own PA. They should be doing this for free. But when it comes time to file the claim, give that person the business. Yeah. Have them help you out, because at the end of the day, it's really not, it doesn't cost you anything for a lot of the times, right? Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. For the most part, a lot of it gets packaged in, right? So, the big thing is making sure you have a good contractor. Make sure you've got a good public adjuster. Make sure that contractor is doing annual inspections on your property. Correct. Make sure that public adjuster is, there's a lot of times you get the people that come in and it's a one-stop shop and but it's really not. Right. And that's why it's good to build a team. That's why I work with people like Jordan and people like Kyle and, the guys over at, I'm not going to name my vendors, but some of the metal companies that do a ton of metal jobs, as you're well aware of, it's just, I partner up with the right people and as you should, as a property owner, as a manager, if you're a roofer, partner up with the right people. I'm not saying it's got to be me or him, but find a good team. Find a good team, because when you're going into these losses, you're dealing with catastrophic events, because you're not going to file a claim for, a quarter inch of hail or half an inch of hail. You're doing it when it's a problem.
Nope.
Right. And if you're doing it, if you're doing that and you're just trying to get a roof bought for free because it seems like the right thing, you're doing it wrong. Sorry. Right. Sorry, not sorry. But at the end of the day, make sure that you build up a big team. Make sure that you got the solid resources, the solid assets. Make sure they've got the horsepower. If you have a small, 30,000 square foot, 40,000 square foot commercial property, use a local guy. You've got one building, use a local dude.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to say, look, I'm a nationwide. I'm telling people to not use me. Right. But that's the case. Use somebody else. If you have a portfolio, you want to find somebody that has the horsepower to handle you nationwide. Somebody like Jordan's licensed in, 85% of the country.
Yep.
Like, he can operate every, same thing with us, with me. So, I mean, that's the big thing is partner up with those types of people. It doesn't have to be us, but at the end of the day, do your vetting, do your homework, just like when you get your health insurance or you're buying a home. This is no different. You're providing, you want to make sure that you're getting maintenance done. You're getting your policy reviewed every year. Just like, hey, you've got an Apple, I've got an Apple, which, hey, due to the Apple family, right? But like, you get your thing. Hey, would you like to do this update?
Right.
Okay. Do you read it?
No.
Right. Have you seen that South Park episode?
No, I have not.
Oh God. I
don't watch too much TV, man. I just read policies.
Yeah. Well, we'll graduate one day. I know you and I both work 70, 80 hours a week. Easy.
It's unreal, man.
Yeah.
I got kids and I got all that other stuff. So yeah, it gets pretty wild. But no, you're 100% correct, man. I mean, it's just doing your due diligence. A lot of these guys that own these properties, they own multiple properties that we deal with at a time. I mean, I'd probably say 9 times out of 10 where I get a property that's brought to me and he owns 10 or 11 or 12, whatever it may be. And I want to take a look at one. I want to take a look at all of them for you. Normally you kind of get a little bit of that pushback where it's like, I don't want to file on them. And the first response I give is, I don't want to file on all of them. Like, that's not the name of the game here. It's just go file claims. That actually kind of screws you over. Mm-hmm. But I want to take a look, see if they're all in a swath. If they are in a swath, then I'm going to have a conversation with you.
And it's not a situation. It's
50% of them are
location business.
Yeah, and so I'm going to take a look at it. We're going to do a proper inspection on it. Either myself or you or somebody else going to go out there and take a look at it, and it's going to say, "Hey, here's your property." But the reason why I want to go take a look at all of them and get photos of all of them is because if I have photos from 2023 here in April, and there's no hail damage, right? There's no hail damage at all. And if it gets hit next year during this month, and then we go back out there and they're going to say, hey, man, this thing got peppered with, 1.25 hail or 1.75 inch hail, whatever it may be.
As you can see here from Exhibit A.
Correct. And then you come back and they say, well, how old is this damage? Like, it just happened. Are you sure? Pretty sure, because I got a photo from last year.
Here's why timestamp documentation. We got a portfolio.
None of the damage. And so that it really shoots their argument in the foot of like maybe pre-existing damage, maybe not, whatever it may be.
Well, the whole goal is to expedite it. It's like, look, if there's damage, bring it back to pre-loss condition, see you later, bye. And the way you do it is make sure that the roof was installed properly originally. If it wasn't, get it fixed. Have a regular maintenance program. Get annual inspections. Do your documentation. Companies like mine, company like yours, I'm slapping this thing. We do it for free.
Yeah.
We don't charge, right? I mean, like, obviously, if something happens, give us the business. I mean, we'll help you build it out. But, like, the big thing is that this is all pro bono stuff, guys. So, like, it doesn't cost people anything. And that's a big common misconception, to just have an annual inspection done. Have it looked at. Get it checked. Right. Take photos. I put it into Company Cam. Shout out Company Cam. Great program. Put it into Company Cam. I will send that to the client every year. Boom, boom, boom. Here's your photos. You get it. You can look at it. Here's your maintenance plan. Set up a DNE or an NTE, a do not exceed and not to exceed. I'll come out there. We come out there annually. We'll service the properties. We'll look at them. You don't want to spend more than $3,000 per visit? Cool. Bam, get it put together. Here's your PO. See you later. Bye.
I agree.
Yeah. But the big thing is the life cycle management. But I think we're getting, we're running a little late here. So cool, man. Well, Jordan, hey, thanks for coming on to the podcast. I know you're popping my podcast cherry. Right. So I'm very, very excited. I hope to have a lot of new guests on. I hope to have you back on. And one thing that always matters, Jordan, is experience. So thanks for being on, buddy.
Thanks, bud.
Cool.